You can even use like iPhone portrait mode, just anything that makes it look really professional and like a portrait. So have a picture of you. Make sure you have descriptions of your recent experiences for jobs and internships and research, whatever skills and experiences you want to include. Make sure you describe them so that basically the whole point is that employers, they look through your profile on those job search websites. So for example, on LinkedIn, they can search and find students on there, and they can read their profiles, and it's kind of a snapshot of your resume, but more in detail. So make sure you have descriptions of your job experiences so they can read what experiences you have and how you fit with what they want. Also, a really, really important thing is to have your skills section in your profiles on LinkedIn or on Handshake. So I was talking about keywords earlier. You can use those as kind of like skills. Just make sure that you're being really specific with what skills you're including, because a lot of times employers are going to find you based on keyword searches. So they'll type in a skill, like for example, written communication or like event coordinating. They'll type it in and then they'll find people's profiles that match that. So you want to make sure your skill section has those skills so that they can search you and find you through that. So yeah, definitely have your profile filled out. I know that for Handshake, students that have their profiles like filled out all the way, they actually get employers reaching out to them and messaging them. And it's just an easy way to network. Another thing is like Google yourself. Make sure that you don't have any like weird things on Google coming up when you Google your name. Just because companies and employers are going to search your name if they're interested in hiring you, and they might like look up and see what you have and what kinds of things are associated with your name. So just be wary of what comes up in the Google search. Try to Google yourself every once in a while. And then the last thing is to just explore and build your network. So when you're on these job networking sites and job search sites, there's networking options. So you can message people, you can look up people's profiles, you can read about different companies. Just use those resources and just like have fun with it. Explore what there is out there. Try to talk to people that are like similar to you or in similar fields. Just build relationships, build networks, and use those resources because they are free, and it's an easy way to like make connections, which will help you get more opportunities. Okay, so now that you have all the background information, it's time to actually start searching for jobs. So yay, cool. So if you have like a computer or device with you, like feel free to take it out and you can be exploring it while I'm talking, if that helps you. So let's get started. So these are a list of job search resources that are specifically for remote jobs because of COVID-19 and everything. It's really hard to have in-person jobs nowadays. So these are some resources to search for remote jobs. There actually is quite a lot available. So check it out if you're a graduating senior and you're freaking out about applying for jobs. There are options for you. So these are just a list of options. LinkedIn and Handshake are the ones I'm going to be doing like a tutorial for you. The rest of them work in similar ways. So just kind of keep in mind what I'm talking about and apply it to all these different websites. So check those out. And yes, I believe this presentation can be sent to people who registered for the event. So we can definitely follow up about that. If your email is attached to this event, we can probably email it to you. Anybody want to comment on that and confirm that?
Yeah, we'll be sending out this presentation via email. That's why we also would like for you guys to send out your emails to make it easier to send that to you guys.
Cool. Anything else before I move on? All right, I'll just keep going. So the first resource that I'm going to be showing you is Handshake. So a lot of you might have heard of Handshake from the emails that we send you, Career Center. but it can be confusing to navigate or to figure out how to use the resource. So I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible so that you all know how to access it. So Handshake is basically every student at UCSC, even alumni, you all have Handshake accounts, and it's basically a job network, an online job networking, job search application tool. And it also has like events. So you all registered for this event on Handshake. So it has a list of events that the Career Center is putting on with companies and virtual sessions, virtual workshops. So Handshake has a lot of really cool things. You can also make career advising appointments through Handshake. So basically think of Handshake as like everything for career services, everything that you need is gonna be on Handshake. So keep that in mind. So specifically talking about job search, here's how you're going to access Handshake. So if you go to our main homepage, UCSC Career Center, um, it's called careers.ucsc.edu. That's our homepage if you're trying to navigate that right now. And you go under the quick links tab on the left-hand side, there's going to be like this big orange button, and it says Handshake Student Access. That's the best way to log into Handshake. It's just the easiest way because it goes straight to like the UCSC server. So go ahead and click on that. And you're just going to sign in with your UCSC Gold username and password. If you are an alumni, I believe you can still sign in. You just have to use your email address. And then let's see next. Okay, so once you're on Handshake, there's going to be a big bar at the top. If you click on the jobs tab, I circled it with this red circle, and it's the jobs tab at the top. If you click on that, it'll link you straight to like a job search tool. So I really like how Handshake does job search. It's really useful because there's a lot of filters you can use, which I'll be going over. But basically, you can use the keywords that we were talking about earlier in the presentation. Keep those keywords at hand or like have a note of them, and you can use those to search for jobs. So if one of my keywords was like event coordinating, I could type that into the search bar. Or if it's like advising or tutoring or just something specific, then I can put that in the search bar and see what comes up. And you can see that there's going to be a list of jobs that comes up. So when I typed in remote on the search bar, which shows in that picture, you can see there's 795 jobs listed under there, tagged as remote. So that's really cool. You can look under there, check it out. And then a cool thing is that you can save the search. So if you don't feel like going every day, logging in and doing a new search, you can just save this one so that you get email notifications every time there's a new job posted. And the way you do that is, if you could see the red arrow on this picture, it says save your search. You can just save the search on there and it will send you email notifications whenever there's new jobs. You can also favorite jobs. So you can put like a star on each job if you really like it or you want to apply to it later. You can like save it under your favorites. So those are some cool functions that you can use. There's also some really cool filters for how you can like search for jobs. So you can search based on your city, your zip code, your state. So if you just want to look for jobs like in the Bay Area, you can type in like San Francisco, Bay Area, California. You can also filter it by job type. So internships or jobs or fellowships, you can like filter it that way. You can filter it by full-time, part-time, paid, unpaid, interviewing on campus. There are companies that actually do their interviews at our on campus. So you have an advantage with that because you're a UCSC student and you can just access the interview from campus, which is cool. Yeah, so there's all kinds of cool filters. You can even filter it by your major. So that's really cool. You can just click on your major and see what jobs there are looking for people in your major. So yeah, hopefully that helps with searching for jobs for Handshake. I really recommend that you use Handshake because the employers that are on Handshake have a partnership with our school, specifically recruiting UCSC students. So you have a good chance because they're literally looking for UCSC students, and that's why they're doing outreach through Handshake UCSC. So I would say definitely give it a shot and see what you can find. And if anything, you can at least learn about what positions are out there. Even if you don't like any of them, it's good to just see what's out there so you know what you want and what you don't want in a job. So yeah, check it out. Um, any questions or anything? Cool. Um, and then there's LinkedIn, which a lot of people don't know there's a job search function on LinkedIn, but it's actually one of my favorite ways to look for jobs because there's so many opportunities on there. And it's not just for like a specific industry. There's so many different types of industries and jobs available. So I really like the diversity of like options on LinkedIn. So one cool thing about LinkedIn is if you see the red square that says suggested job searches, and then there's a list of examples like freelance photographer, photo editor, photo assistant. So those are all personalized based on your LinkedIn profile. So if you have like your major on there and your skills on there, it's gonna basically give you search options like keywords, like it gives you examples so you don't have to think of it on your own. It just personalizes it based on your profile. So if you're not good at thinking of words and keywords, this is a good way to just have it done for you. So that's a cool thing about it is it personalizes it based on your profile. And then you can search for jobs in a similar way as Handshake. There's going to be filters you can use, which I'll show you in the next slide. And you can search by location. And you can even save the search just like you can in Handshake. You can save your job search for LinkedIn so that you'll get notifications whenever there's new jobs under that filter. And then you can also apply to jobs directly from LinkedIn, which is really cool. And this is kind of small, but there's like a lot of filters under the job search bar. So there's like, if you want to filter it by experience level and do entry level, so that means like if you don't have any experience in the industry and you want to look for jobs that don't have a lot of qualifications, you can just filter it by entry level jobs, and then those jobs will typically be more lenient with the requirements. If you're worried about not meeting the requirements for certain jobs, you can filter it by company, by the posting date. You can also, if you click on all filters, there's even more filters. So I encourage you all to just try it on your own and look through all the filters. There's a lot there. Yeah, so definitely try that. And if you can see next to the freelance photographer position, there's a job alert feature right there that you can toggle on or off. If you toggle it on, it will basically email you updates about new positions in that category. So yeah, definitely use LinkedIn to your advantage. Have a cool filled out profile. Make it known in your profile that you're looking for jobs so that they know that you're available and ready to apply. Okay, and then the last thing I will show you is next week, there is a career fair, all virtual for the UC wide. And there's going to be a lot of companies coming to coming to you virtually. And basically through this website called Career Eco, which is linked at the bottom of the slide, you can just register through there and you can chat with employers like directly. They'll do info sessions, so they'll talk about their companies and what positions they're hiring for. And you can just chat with them, ask them questions, and they can talk to you. I see a question in the chat. I believe no. LinkedIn is not partnered with UCSC or anything like that. But there is specific pages on LinkedIn just for UCSC students and groups. So I would suggest joining those groups because you'll get some specific information based on just being a student at UCSC. But there is no partnership between them. So yeah, definitely check out the career fairs. There's one for STEM and one for non-STEM majors. Check them out. And since it's online, there's not much, you don't have to really do much. Just we also have workshops for how to prepare for these career fairs. So if you're kind of like nervous about it, come to our drop-in hours and we'll help you out at the Career Center to help you prepare for it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had for job searching. Hopefully that gets you started and makes you feel a little more comfortable like getting started with the process. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with the acing the interview portion of this presentation. Um, Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that you want to do whenever you're thinking about having an interview is you want to make sure that you do your basic research. So you want to make sure that you review the job description and that you study it. So make sure that you review the research the organization, use their website and other online resources like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Google. You want to make sure that you're familiar with the size of the company and the organization, the sort of business culture. And then one other thing that you always want to do is use your network to see if there's someone that you can talk to about the job or the company. So one way to do that would be through LinkedIn is a good one to use. You can always research the company or organization on LinkedIn. And the cool thing about LinkedIn is it'll show you if there's anybody who attended UCSC that works at the company. So that's one way to sort of network and reach out to somebody to sort of open a door for you. Another thing that you can always do is use the Career Access Network and talk to any alumni and see if any UCSC alumni work at that company or are familiar with it. Um, in terms of a little more research, so things that you want to know are who is the customer, what sort of services are offered by them, if the company or organization is on a regional or more national level, what sort of challenges and competitors does the organization face. You also want to make sure that you are familiar with their history, the mission statements, any values that the company stands for, and that you're familiar with any like 5 to 10 year plans that they might have, which you can usually find on their website under like their about section. You also want to make sure that you Google them and find out about any recent news regarding the company or organization so that you're familiar with sort of where the company stands in present day. Another good thing that to know is how many employees they have to give you an idea of just how big or how small the company or organization might be. And then one last thing that you want to know is if it's a nonprofit or if it's a startup, just a little more in detail about what sort of company it is. So once you're having the virtual interview, the first thing you want to do is set the scene. So you want to make sure that you have a quiet, distraction-free space. You want to make sure that you let those around you know that you're going to be in an interview and that you need quiet, uninterrupted time for that. You also want to make sure that you find good lighting and that you avoid sitting behind any light sources behind you that might sort of look a little funky in the camera. And then your background, you want to make sure that you have a blank wall or something on a more neutral side that looks kind of clutter-free so that it just looks a little more presentable. And we recommend avoiding virtual backgrounds. So working with technology. So you want to make sure that you definitely test your technology beforehand. If there's anything that you need to download, say any technology any applications that you might be using for the interview, make sure that you have those downloaded and installed. Test that your camera and their microphones work. Do like a practice run to see how it all looks. Make sure that you look into the camera when you're talking and not the screen so that you ensure making eye contact with the interviewer. You also want to make sure that you do a settings check, so make sure that you have your full first and last name. And then make sure that you have the correct time zones and dates if you are interviewing with anybody on the East Coast, for example. And make sure that you mark your calendar with the correct date. And then another thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have the link for the video interview saved and easily accessible for you so that you don't have to frantically look for it in like your inbox folder or something like that. So dressing for success. So because it is a virtual interview, you only need to worry about having a presentable upper half body. So you want to make sure that you wear a blouse or a button-up shirt. Suits are also fine. You want to make sure that you have sparse makeup and just check how it looks on camera. Style your hair neatly, touch up and trim any facial hair. You can also use the touch up appearance feature on Zoom to sort of, I guess, make yourself look more energized. And definitely make sure that you do dress the part because it definitely can help boost your confidence a little in an interview. So make sure that you plan ahead before you have the interview. So at hand, you want to make sure that you have a copy of your resume, the job description, any interview questions, and any notes that you might want to reference during the interview. Some standard questions that tend to come up on in interviews are like, tell me about yourself, why do you want to work with us, what sort of unique qualities or abilities would you bring to this position, how does your experience or employment relate to the position, what are your strengths and weaknesses, what experience do you have working in a team, and then the last question that they always ask is, what questions do you have for me? So some other types of questions that might also present themselves during an interview are behavioral questions. So some examples of these are, for example, describe a time when you had a problem with a team member. Another one would be, give me a time when you face a lot of obstacles towards achieving a goal. And then one way to answer these questions during an interview would be to sort of use the STAR method. So the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, and result. So for situation, you want to make sure that you sort of set the scene. So when and where the situation took place. For task, you want to make sure that you discuss what you accomplished, action, what actions you took towards achieving that goal or solving the problem, and then your end result. Or if it was something on the more negative scope, you want to make sure that you emphasize what you learned from that experience to sort of end it on a positive note during your interview. And then questions, it is always good to prepare questions to ask at the end of the interview. So one way that you can always do this is during your research. While you're researching the company or organization, it's always good to write down any questions that might pop up as you're looking into the company and their history or their values. Some examples that we have here are, for instance, what are you hoping a person in this position will accomplish? Another question can be, what types of projects are a priority once I begin this position? You can also ask about the department goals for the upcoming year, or if there's any training or professional development provided for the job. And then at the end of your interview, you want to make sure that you do thank the interviewer for their time. Make sure that you reiterate your interest and ask about any next steps. So if they're requiring any additional materials, make sure that you do send those out ASAP. And you also want to make sure that you send out a thank you email to sort of follow up with the interviewer. And for your thank you note, you want to make sure that you thank the interviewer for their time. Again, reiterate the position that you were applying for. Mention something that you said during your interview to sort of remind them of who you are. And then you want to make sure that you describe in about 1 or 2 sentences why you're the best applicant. And then just sort of lastly, definitely come see a peer. So if you do need help with any job search, navigating Handshake or LinkedIn a little bit more, you can definitely come to drop-ins for that and talk to one of us. Our drop-in hours are Mondays 10:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Tuesdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. We also help with interviews. So if you are looking to learn more about interview tips, or just any clarification, we also do that during drop-ins, so feel free to do that. If you're interested in having a mock interview, with a career coach, we do provide that as an appointment through Handshake. It's very easy to schedule an appointment. It's very straightforward. The appointments are 30 minutes long, and for the mock interviews, you essentially, as you're making your appointment, you want to make sure that you submit your resume and the job description that you're going to be that you're trying to prepare for, so that the career coach can sort of take on that role of an interviewer to sort of ask you questions that um, as would be as close as possible to the sort of questions you'd be receiving during the actual interview. The mock interview will essentially be like the first 15 to 20 minutes as an actual like interview, and then the remaining time will be sort of to provide you feedback on what sort of things you did well, what sort of things you could improve on, just to make sure that you do your absolute best during the actual interview. And that is all I have to share for today. Fatima, if you want to add anything.
Does anybody have like any questions about anything we covered or any resources that we talked about? We're happy to answer. Another thing I just want to mention is for all of the graduating seniors out there, I feel your pain. I'm a graduating senior too, and I know that during these times it's really difficult to like think about looking for jobs and like even if it's possible or not. And I just want to like reassure you that like everything's gonna be okay. And we do have like resources that you, even though we're not having school in person, there are virtual resources from our resource centers that you can access, like the Asian American Pacific Islanders Resource Center has a lot of like events and cool resources, and the Career Center, like you can always make an appointment with the career advisor, even no matter what it is that you need to talk about related to like finding jobs or going to grad school, like they'll be there for you. We're here for you. Like just use your resources and really talk through it with whoever you can. So I just want to like reassure everybody that we're here for you.
Yeah, on that note, a little more, just one more thing to add. If anyone who's interested in attending the UC virtual career fairs, if you do want to get an idea of sort of how to navigate that, we are having some workshops this week to help you prepare for that. So we do have one tomorrow from 5 to 6 p.m., I believe, and then we have one on Friday, May 22nd, from 1 to 2 p.m. if anyone is interested in attending those.
Hello? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for putting this on. Definitely a lot to think about, but I really appreciate all of you taking the time out of your day to do this.
No, yeah, of course. I'm hoping some of it is useful to you. Like Fatima was saying, definitely attend drop-ins. We understand how stressful the whole situation is, and we're here to help in however ways we can. So, yeah.
I think I do see a question in the chat. Let me just double check.
Yeah.
When should you send a follow-up email after an interview? I would say like really soon after the interview, so maybe like a day after or 2 days after. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely go with that as well. You don't want to send it right away that day up, just because um, they would most likely still be interviewing people. So you want to give it a little time for them to finish with the interview process so that you can send that follow-up email. Another way to make sure that to sort of give yourself like a time frame would be to sort of ask them at the end of your interview what the next steps are and when like you would be hearing back from them regarding any decisions. Just to give you an idea of the time frame, how the interview process is going to keep going on for, so that you can send that follow-up email. I also forgot to mention, we do have a survey that I'm going to attach in the chat. So if everyone could please fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. It's a very quick survey, won't take too long. I do see another question. So any personal advice regarding virtual interviews? Yeah, so I mean, I've personally been having some virtual interviews myself. I have been sort of following this same procedure and I found it very helpful. The thing about doing virtual interviews is that it's a lot easier to sort of keep your materials in one place and make them accessible, just because you can have them like on the side of your screen or anything like that if you need to sort of access it really quickly. Um, if that answers your question, or if there's anything specifically that you would like for me to talk about.
On that note, I would also add, just try to practice as much as possible, just like answering questions or thinking about talking about yourself and everything. Try to practice beforehand, because a lot of people think that interviews you can just wing it, and then that's what when that happens. What happens is you get nervous because you don't really have the preparation done, so you don't really know what to be talking about. But just doing the preparation beforehand just gives you that extra confidence, because you kind of already know what things that you want to say. So I would say, like, don't underestimate interviews and definitely prepare for them, just like you would an assignment or like in something important to you.
Yeah, I see the question was if, like, for instance, like their internet connection is bad. Normal, like in the experiences that I've had, if that's the issue, if that's like an issue on the other party, they'll usually let you know. Um, and as long as you establish beforehand, like sort of if they're going to be like interrupting or just kind of like letting you know in a way, if they can't hear you or if they're having internet problems, then just make sure that you do that before the interview begins, so that there aren't any issues throughout the interview itself. Yeah, just yeah, if you are interested in getting the presentation notes, just jot down your email for us in here in the chat.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining. Response to the chat.
Mhm. So I see another question. So to like discuss a little bit more about how to dress for virtual interviews and facial appearance. Yeah, so like I said, because it's a virtual interview, you can only see like your upper half. So it's a lot easier to sort of just dress up from the top up. So I would recommend just wearing something, definitely not like your pajamas or anything like that. Just making sure that you dress up a little bit, like with like we mentioned, like a button up is always nice, like a blouse. Anything that you would wear to like an actual interview, like an actual like in-person interview, is the best way to go for a virtual interview. And then, like we said, just making sure that you check your facial appearance in the camera to see how it looks, and just having like neat and tidy hair. that's a good question. So the question is, what would be a good answer to what are some of your weaknesses? So one way to sort of tackle those questions is to sort of discuss something that you wouldn't necessarily consider like a weakness. So for instance, like let's see. For instance, one that I usually use is that I'm very like overcommitted to the position, so I have like a hard like work-life balance because I end up overworking a little bit more. Um, do you have anything to sort of add, Fatima?
I would say if you are going to talk about a weakness and you're going to be honest about it, then try to like follow up with something like positive that you're working towards, like to kind of work on your weakness. So don't just say a weakness and like leave it at that. I would say if you're going to mention a weakness, try to like talk about how you're going to be like working towards growing and like fixing that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so the tell me about yourself question. Yeah, that one can sort of catch people off guard. One way to sort of answer that is just to kind of elaborate more on sort of your experiences and sort of like what you're looking for in a position. Um, you don't want to necessarily like go and talk about like your hobbies or anything more like on the personal side during the interview. Um, anything that you might want to add?
Yeah, so I would say this is the part that you can actually prepare like beforehand. I know it sounds weird, but it would be good to like have your own little spiel memorized or like practice. But you can talk about like your major, you can talk about like a recent work experience you've had or like relevant experiences that prepared you for this job. Be really brief, like try to keep it less than a minute, but definitely like, oh, sorry, my camera's falling. Definitely like try to have something in the back of your mind. Talk about like your major, your most recent relevant experience related to the job. And then, yeah, you don't want to talk about like hobbies. You don't want to talk about like your family members or like things like that. They're mostly just looking for like your professional and educational experience summarized in like a really short snapshot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one way to sort of like think about it is like you're kind of giving like an elevator pitch. That's around like a 30-second just kind of spiel about yourself and like Fatima was saying, like your academics and professional background. So if you want more tips on that, we do have resources on the website, on the Career Center website to sort of discuss how to construct an elevator pitch, but it's essentially just what everything that Fatima was discussing right now. That's a great question. So the question is, should you screen share your resume or portfolio on Zoom during a virtual interview? Um, I don't believe you need to screen share your resume with them. Unless they ask you for it, then yes, of course. But in my personal experiences with virtual interviews, I haven't had anyone ask me to share my resume with them in a screen share just because they've already reviewed it and have access to it themselves via email.
And just a plug, if you need help making a resume or you're not really confident about your resume, Career Center, we review resumes. You can even email it to our CC Coach email. Like we can help you make a really good resume.
Yeah. Another question that I'm seeing here is, are there specific websites for certain majors to look at during job searches? There are a couple out there for specific like majors. So if you, well, not necessarily specific majors, but it's like specific like fields of industry. So for instance, like if you're looking for like government nonprofit positions, there are certain websites like idealist.org that are very good for you to find those opportunities. There are a couple for remote positions of because of the current situation that are for more like STEM related majors. Can't recall it from the top of my head, but I'm sure it's one of the links that was included in the presentation. But there are a couple of those, and we also have a list of those on our website, so you can access those through the student section of our website as well.
I also just want to mention, like, because I'm a humanities major, so I kind of understand how it's a little bit hard to search for jobs based on just your major. So something that I found really helpful to do is to kind of like look at what my specific major, what skills are shown in that major, like written communication or like certain specific like skills based on the classes I've taken and stuff, and then search based on those skills rather than the majors, because sometimes there aren't a lot of like major specific job search functions. So I don't know if that helps, but that's something that's been helping me when I'm trying to find jobs.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. I've seen like if you like look through like multiple job descriptions, you'll see that not all of them list like a preferred degree for the position. So like Fatima was saying, it's always good to just look through like specific keywords. There is a question, how would you answer, describe a time when you faced a lot of obstacles to achieving a goal without getting personal? I would recommend sort of focusing on like a work related like situation or academic as well. Fatima, do you want to elaborate a little bit?
I feel like you can, yeah, I think I would focus it on like an experience, like a work experience or like academic experience. But if you really do want to talk about something personal, I would say follow the STAR method that we talked about in the interview presentation, just because it will help you structure it so that you're not kind of just getting, because it's really hard when you're telling stories to like keep a structure and like tell it in a way that's like really concise but also getting your point across. So I would say like whatever stories that you have in mind, first of all, try to keep it related to your work experiences, but if it isn't, and if it has to be something unrelated, then try to like structure it and like lay it out before you do the interviews, just so you know how to tell that story without getting really deep into it. If that kind of makes sense, just try to like control that a little bit.
Yeah, I would also say like practice it with someone like a family member or one of the career coaches for like sort of have a mock interview to sort of see how that would come across to somebody else, and just kind of hear out like what their perspective is on that. Another question is, what is the best way to network during this pandemic? That is a great question. Definitely take this time to, I would say, if you haven't already created a profile, create it or update like a LinkedIn profile. I would say LinkedIn is becoming very useful because of the COVID-19 situation. So definitely to sort of update that. Like Fatima mentioned earlier, reach out to anybody who is might be like a UCSC alumni in any of the for any company or organization that is of your interest. The Career Access Network is also available. That has that's the career advice network with a lot of UCSC alumni that are eager to help undergrad students. That is a good way to also just kind of network during this time. You can create your profile and essentially just input what your field of industry, like what you're interested in and what sort of positions, and then it'll match you with alumni who either like receive the same degree that you are working towards, work in the same field that you're interested in, how many years they worked in that, and it'll match you on a percentage of how much it matches to your preferences, and then you can just reach out to them through their schedule, like a sort of interview conversation with them to sort of get more insight on how they manage to get into the field that you're interested in.
Another thing is like there are so many virtual sessions being held by just certain companies. They're having like virtual info sessions where you can ask them any questions and they'll talk to you about how to get in the door to their industries. Even if you're not interested in that specific company or working for them, like just try to get experience talking to like people who represent companies and seeing how you interact with them, see what kind of questions they can answer for you. It just helps you get practice. And since you are still a student at UCSC, or even if you're an alumni, you have access to all these events that are happening that you can just be like one of like 10 students that can be talking to certain companies, because those events are free resources and they are on Handshake. If you want to look up, there's so many happening this quarter, especially. Try to just attend some of them, even if you're shy or even if you've like never talked to companies before. Just give it a shot and see like how it feels for you. It's a good way to just get started, and they might like refer you to some resources that you never heard of before. So I don't know, just try being open-minded and try exploring those virtual sessions.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that. I personally have been attending a lot of those events myself, and it makes it really easy for you to network and get to know people in different industries. Just because, like Fatima said, they're much smaller groups, so it's easier for you to sort of make yourself noticed and sort of reach out to employers and recruiters from different companies or organizations. Another way that you can always also network is attending the career fair that's coming up. That's a really good way to network as well, just because you will be meeting a really long list of employers. That'll help you sort of not only, I mean, that will not only help you with like your own like job search, but it'll also help you develop those networking skills. Even if you're not necessarily looking for a job at the moment, I would recommend still attending to sort of practice those skills.
And also like keep in touch with people in your major or in your classes. Like try to keep in touch with them, because they might like go get jobs in the future, and you can like talk to them and see what kind of journeys that they've had, and like maybe you'll learn about some opportunities that you wouldn't have known before. Try to keep those connections that you have with your classmates and people in your major, and yeah, that could be good for you too.
Yeah. Another question I see here is, how do you get noticed on LinkedIn? Fatima, you kind of covered this during your presentation. Do you want to answer it?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So profile photo, have a really nice professional headshot. Also, like a lot of people will find you based on your like description underneath your profile picture. So like your profile header or something, have something really like personal to you and something like really cool and unique as your like description, so that when people see your profile picture, they see like a little quick snapshot of you. And you want that to be something not so dull and boring, but something that like describes you and is like unique, and it describes your experiences in like a really cool way. You can see examples of that on LinkedIn. They show examples for how to write unique descriptions, but I would say try to have something like eye-catching. And then also like there's an actual like summary description for each LinkedIn profile. Don't leave that unfilled out. Try to fill it out, and think about the experiences you've had in college and in your recent work experiences, and try to like piece together a little like summary that is like interesting to read, because people do read that and it will make you stand out, because a lot of people don't have those descriptions. So I would say those are just little ways to make yourself stand out.
Okay, so I see another question. So the question is, what are some big don'ts when doing a virtual interview? Like what will definitely not get you hired? That is a great question, actually. Um, I would say, well, even though it is a virtual interview, you do want to make sure that you um, sort of uh, take sort of like take on it as like a regular in-person interview. So definitely, you don't want to seem too distracted when you're doing the interview or anything like that. Like we mentioned, you want to make sure that you're in a quiet space, clutter-free, so that you're not sort of looking around or anything like that. You also, oh, there's a lot actually. That's a really good question. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more, Fatima, on any don'ts that you might think of?
Yeah, I would say so. People like to have positive like social interactions with you. So try not to talk about like really negative sounding things. Like if you're talking about your past jobs, don't badmouth them. Don't say bad things about like your past jobs, or try not to come off like you're a negative person. Try to be as enthusiastic and like and positive as possible. Also, just have a good energy if you can. Like try to like seem excited about the job, and try to seem like you actually like care about the job and you did your research and this is something that you want, because they can pick up on if it's just something you're doing just to do it. They'll know. So try to like feel excited and try to feel like you really want it, because they'll pick up on if you don't.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. It is very obvious to an interviewer when you haven't done your research at all regarding the company and any services that they might offer. You might think that you might be playing it cool or anything like that, but you most definitely are not. It is very clear to the interviewer. Okay. So another question that's on here is, other than doing mock interviews to prepare and not be as nervous on the day of the actual interview, do you have any other tips on how to get rid of the jitters on that day? Great question. So there's a lot that you can really do to sort of prepare. I personally find that it's best to just do all the research before the interview. That already relieves a lot of the stress of preparing for the interview, because you know you're not going in unprepared. You know what you're going to say. Um, you're ready for any questions that might come your way. So I would definitely recommend like just making sure that you do the research. Having your materials at hand also helps, because um, they'll be there if you feel like you need to sort of take a look at them or reference them during your interview if you feel like the jitters get the best out of you. Making sure that you just take some deep breaths and try to calm down before the interview is always good as well.
Something that I'll add is kind of just know your value, like know what you've done, like own it, own your experiences, like own who you are. And if you come into it with the mentality that you know yourself and that you understand your value and what you're bringing to the table, you'll be more confident and you'll feel less intimidated, hopefully. And also, if you do have jitters during the interview, just kind of understand that it's okay, because everybody does and everybody's human, and the person interviewing you is also like understanding, and they'll be willing to look past some nerves and some jitters, because it's just human nature. So definitely just embrace it. If you're someone who's really nervous all the time and you have trouble speaking, they're gonna look past it. They're mostly looking for like the content of what you're saying, so just try to focus on like being clear and delivering what you can, and try not to be down on yourself too much.
Yeah, definitely. Even if the jitters do get like the best of you during the interview, as long as you have prepared for the interview and the interviewer can tell based off of what you're saying during the interviews, and you should be fine. They definitely will overlook the jitters. There is another question. So the question is, what kind of experiences should you highlight about your past? Um, Fatima, do you want to take on this?
Is it about your past or your path? I misunderstood.
So the question is, what kind of experiences should you highlight about your past? I'm assuming like work experiences.
Oh, okay. I feel like try to highlight the experiences that are the most relevant to what you're applying to. So like if the job you're applying to is like a it involves certain skills like customer service skills, it involves administrative skills, organization skills, filing. Try to like have talk about your experiences that relate to that, and try not to talk about things that are like really far off and that don't really relate. But if that's all the experience that you have and you don't really have anything that's specifically relevant to the job you're applying to, you can still talk about whatever experiences you have had most recently, as long as you're trying to talk about the skills that you gained from it and trying your best to like show how the skills you're gaining are going to be an asset to the company you're applying to. So basically, whatever you're saying, just keep in mind that you're trying to sell yourself to the company and trying to show why you're bringing value to them based on your skills. So just try to talk about your skills that way. I don't know if that answers your question or if that helps. There's another question that's asking if you can bring notes to in-person interviews as well. You definitely can. So there's something called a portfolio. It's basically like a little folder, a professional looking folder. You can put your resume in there. You can put any like interview question preparation things that you have on there, any notes about the job. Yeah, you can definitely bring them, but I would say be really cautious. Like try not to be reading them the whole time. Don't be so caught up in your notes. Try to be present with the interviewer. But if you get stuck, then you can definitely like refer back to your notes. But I don't know, Jasmine, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much just summed it up. Yeah, the portfolios is a good way to sort of have your materials with you. The job description is also good to include in there as well in case you sort of forget about any of the requirements or anything that they might be asking about during the interview. But like Fatima said, just try to be cautious and not rely on it too much.
Also, so if you go on Glassdoor, it's a website. A lot of times they have the interview questions for some companies posted on there because people who have already done interviews with them have posted the questions. So try to like look up and see if you can find some of the questions and kind of like have a sneak peek of what they might ask you. This is really helpful for technical interviews, especially like for computer engineering jobs or software engineering jobs. Like a lot of times they already post like the questions that they might ask you. So try to like try to research and see if you can already know the questions.
Yeah. So another question that I see here is, what is the best way to seem engaged on a virtual interview, since it is on camera? So you definitely just want to make sure that you, the main thing is eye contact. So you want to make sure that you are looking at the camera rather than the screen to seem as engaged as possible. That it would be like my sort of main tip to sort of seem engaged during the interview. Do you have any, Fatima, any tips?
I would say like try to do those cues that you're listening, like nodding your head and like kind of just trying to show with your body language that you're engaged, because there's not much that you can do there's not a lot you can do virtually. One thing I would also say is like on Zoom, there is an option that you can look at yourself when you're talking. Try to just like swipe the screen so you're only looking at the interviewer. It'll make you avoid the temptation of looking at yourself and like checking yourself out the whole time, which is something I'm so guilty of. But try to like swipe your screen so you're just looking at your interviewer. That usually helps.
Yeah, that's definitely a good tip for sure. Oh, here's a great question. So the question is, what can you do if you don't have any previous experience in the field you're trying to work in? That is a great question. So you definitely shouldn't worry too much if you don't have a lot of experience in the field, because skills are very transferable. So any skills that you might have gained in another position could be assets towards the position that you're looking to apply to. So this is where like sort of looking at the job description comes in handy, because by reviewing it and seeing what sort of qualifications and skills they're looking for, you're able to sort of see if any of your experience can match that or can be relevant to that position. Another thing that you can always do is refer to any academic experience that you might have had. So if you've done any projects, taken any classes where any skills or anything might be relevant to the position, definitely refer to that as well. Is there anything you might want to add, Fatima?
Yeah, everything you said, that's perfect. And also, if you're really having trouble landing jobs specific to your industry and you do think you need some more experience, don't be afraid to just go out and try to do some internships or try to do some easy ways to gain experience in your field. You can do research on campus, you can do internships, you can do pretty much anything that just shows that you're interested in that field. You can join clubs or organizations on campus or off campus that relate to the industry. So if you really don't have anything and you're not finding any luck finding jobs in the industry, just try to do things that show you're interested, even if it's not 2 years of work experience. Just try to get your foot in the door and do whatever you can.
Another question is, what are both of y'all's recommendations to breaking into a very, very competitive space? How can you be unique when everyone else is also super awesome and smart / qualified? That's a great question.
I think that's a really good question and definitely something that is relevant to the times that we're living in. Competition is real. I would say it's easy to take it all really personally and get really sad by it or feel like you're not enough. So I would say the focus should always be thinking about your own career journey and thinking about all the things you've done and all your experiences, being really proud of yourself and really documenting and reflecting on all of your experiences. That's something for me as a senior that's really helped me, is to just go back and really retrace your steps and everything that you've done and find stories in there, find themes in there, and really get to know yourself and how you've gotten to where you are, just to build confidence in yourself. Because if you don't get the job that you wanted, or if there is a lot of competition, you know that you're proud of yourself and that you know where you are and the skills that you have regardless. So definitely the first step would be just build your own confidence and know yourself, so that you don't get dragged down. And then the second thing is just know that everybody has their own journeys and nobody's journey is going to look the same. If you look at people that are in these really high positions or in working in jobs, they've all gone through some interesting experiences to get where they are. So definitely don't get discouraged if you can't find a job right away. You have to be really patient during the process. So I would say have patience, have confidence, know your story, learn about other people's stories. Those are some preliminary things that I would say. I don't know, Jasmine, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, just kind of adding on to that, definitely don't try to avoid comparing yourself to other applicants, just because that can be a very easy way to make yourself feel unmotivated or discouraged about applying to a position. In the meantime, as you continue to apply to different jobs, even if you feel even if it's in a competitive field, I would definitely say make sure that you are preparing your materials to the best of your abilities, to sort of try to enhance and make yourself stand out a little bit more above the other applicants. If you are able to have interviews, making sure that you do follow the follow-up procedure where you thank them with an email to help yourself boost yourself up a little above the other applicants. That would be my main advice. Yeah.
I would also say try to I don't know how to say, I guess try to keep expanding your skill set. So even if, let's say, you don't have a job and you're sitting at home and you don't really know what to be doing besides waiting for applications to be hired or not hired, I would say just keep trying to build your skill sets. There's free classes online that you can take. Try to get certifications and things, or take classes on like computer skills, or just try to like build your skill set, because that there's no age limit for that. There's no end to that. You can always be exploring different skills, and you can be building different skill sets by taking like those classes and doing those things, and just keep attending like events and keep networking, because a lot of people get their jobs based on knowing people. So if you're not really making connections or knowing people, that's a good place to start, because that usually gets people good results for finding jobs, is to just know people, and to get to know people in different industries. Try to put yourself out there if you can, and try to build your skill sets.
Yeah, definitely. Adding on to that, making sure that you are involved. So networking is a way to be involved. On campus, just being involved in like extracurriculars or any sort of organizations that might be related to the sort of industry that you're trying to get into. That might also be a good way to sort of put yourself out there. Having those extracurriculars shows you as a more like well-rounded applicant. So it kind of helps you elevate your application a lot more.
Also, practice good etiquette and good manners and communication skills. The only reason I'm saying that is because then when you do meet people that might have like opportunities available, then they have a good impression of you, and then you can practice your skills so that you can like keep making good impressions on people, and then they'll contact you or they'll reach out to you, and they'll think of you when they have new positions. Try to like leave a good impression, and if you're not really good at that, then you can always practice. There's always time.
So with that, we can begin to sort of wrap it up for this presentation. Thank you guys for logging in and staying for the entire presentation. Fatima, do you want to take it away and wrap it up?
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate that you tuned into this. Definitely share the link to this with your friends and anyone else you think might benefit from it. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to the APERC interns for being amazing, wonderful people.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, we do have the upcoming events this week for preparation for the virtual career fair next week. So I definitely encourage attending those. You can register through Handshake. You'll be able to see the list of employers too. So definitely take a look at that. And if there's any company that interests you, I would definitely recommend attending. I believe there's also a tutorial on how to navigate Career Eco, so definitely take a look at that.
Also, part 2 of this workshop is Wednesday, 5:30 to 7, and it's about navigating institutional discrimination. And I don't know if the APERC interns want to talk more about it, but definitely come through for that.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for attending today and staying the whole time. We really hope that this session was really informative for y'all and that you got some good advice and some good tips to navigate your very upcoming job search and very soon your graduation. So we want to thank you all so much for attending and joining us today. And also we will have a part 2 of this workshop series happening on Wednesday at the same time from 5:30 to 7 p.m. The topic during that workshop will be navigating workplace and institutional discrimination. It's specifically generated towards AAPI folks, but everyone is welcome to join and kind of listen to our guest speakers' personal experiences of how they've navigated workplace discrimination or institutional discrimination, meaning navigating that in graduate school or medical school. So just to give a little bit of a preface to the event, we will be having 4 guest speakers. The first one of our guest speakers is a coordinator at the DePaul University for their Asian American Pacific Islander Resource Center. We also have a medical student from UCSF. She can talk about her journey from Duke University to UCSF and how navigating the medical field is and what pre-med is like. We also have a student who is a current graduate student at the University of Southern California. She's studying for her master's in social work, and she's also a recent alumni of UC Santa Cruz. And then we also have one of our programs, we have our program coordinator, Colette. She is about to attend University of Southern California, and we would love to hear all of their different experiences, and we hope that by listening to their different experiences and advice, you'll be able to kind of navigate that as you move forward, especially during this time, during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have noticed a raise in anti-Asian and anti-AAPI sentiment. So we wanted to give y'all some resources and some advice on how to navigate that on Wednesday. So please join us. We really would love an audience for our guest speakers. And once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. We will be posting, we recorded this entire session. We started the recording just a little bit late, so we missed the first slide, but we do have the majority of this session, and we will be posting these after the session is over, and then emailing you guys the presentation that was used today. If there are no other questions, no other last minute thoughts, we're just gonna go ahead and end the session. I just wanna shout out our director, Kaz. Hi, Kaz. Thank you to our director and to Jamie, one of the other APERC interns here today, and Edward. And then thank you again, Fatima and Jasmine, so much for your wonderful presentation. We were really, I have learned a lot today, and I'm really excited to move forward with my job search, even though that's a year away and I can, I can wait a little bit. But again, thank you all. And yeah, we'll see you all on Wednesday.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.